Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com with you for another Steelers postgame podcast. The Steelers are not victorious in the home opener at Heinz Field as they lose. What was the final score? 26-17, I believe, to the Las Vegas Raiders. It was a dud of a game in a lot of different ways. There were a lot of factors that came into play in regards to the result, and we're going to hash all that out for you here in the next hour or so. So for those watching live on YouTube, welcome. Live on Facebook Live, welcome. And for all those listening on our audio platform, we appreciate all of our listeners. Let's bring in the rest of the crew. Let's start with Dave Schofield, editor. What's up, Dave?
I mean, we're here after a loss. That's what's up.
Absolutely. Brian Anthony Davis, podcast producer. What's up, Brian?
Hey, gentlemen. Good to see you. Wish it was under happier Steelers circumstances, but hey, we've got 15 more of these.
We do. We do have 15 more of these. I don't think anyone predicted an undefeated season. I mean, I did technically, but I also knew that I was going to be wrong on more than one occasion, and this just happens to be one of those. Let's start things off before we get into grades and all that stuff. I do want to talk with you all. Let's just talk about injuries first. This started before the game even began. When the inactive list was released, you found out that Devin Bush and Joe Hayden, who were questionable coming into this game, were out with their groin injuries. And if that wasn't enough, Tyson Alualu breaks his ankle, essentially. He's going to be out for a long time. And then you have Carlos Davis was already out with a knee injury. And then TJ Watt suffers a groin injury, and he is not able to return to the game. If you want to throw into the injury list the fact that Trey Turner got ejected from the game, then you're short of a guard. It was that type of game for the Steelers, and I just want to go around. Let's do some knee-jerk reactions, not just to injuries, to the game in general. We'll start with Dave. What do you think about this game, Dave?
The defense just didn't look the same. I was concerned about the defense, how they would look when the injury report came out. I wasn't sure. Unfortunately, I tweeted out the stats of the Steelers records, after Joe Hayden joined the team, and they're 4-5 in games that he missed. Devin Bush, they're 7-5, but when neither player's on the field, they were 0-3 going into this one. So now it's 0-4. I was concerned about that. I have to admit, I still think that the defense is the driving force of this team. But as we've seen and other teams have seen around the NFL, that injuries can greatly affect what you're trying to do when your top line players aren't available.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Brian Anthony Davis, what was your knee-jerk reaction to the game?
I don't think I was very concerned about the loss of the two defenders as much as everybody else was. I was more concerned the fact that, all right, now the offense has to carry themselves well and help carry this team. And if they just had a little semblance of something early on instead of the same old garbage that we saw last week in the first half, they might have been able to escape that game. Yeah, the defense had all of those guys missing. The offense didn't, and the offense did not hold up to their end of the bargain. The defense was playing down a lot of guys.
Yeah, the offense is a big storyline here. I think it'll kind of be, everyone's going to want to point the finger at someone this game, but ultimately the offense deserves a lion's share of blame as well. Before we get into grades and stuff, let's get a super chat up here. $2 from Nick Hancock said, "We look like expired urine and feces." So that's an interesting comment. I'm not so sure about what that actually says about the Steelers, but let's go through this one player at a time. What's up, Brian?
I was just going to say, I don't really, if they looked like just regular non-expired urine, that's still not good.
You're right.
Yeah,
you are right. Well, let's start off on the offensive side of the ball with our grades, and we're going to start with Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger, who finished 27 of 40 for 295, 7.4 yard average, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 87 rating. We'll start with Dave. What grade are you giving BTR?
Oh wow, we're ready for grades. The biggest one that I have to wonder about is when they're not on the same page, who's not making the right reads. And maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you just have to make sure you're on the right page with stuff. Some people are ready to just throw out Ben Roethlisberger right now. That's not the answer. I don't see that at all. The inabilities of the offense, I don't put strictly at his feet or Matt Canada's feet. People that say it's the same offense. It's not the same offense. It's just not good execution all the time. For me, with Ben, I'm going to go C-. I mean, the interception was just kind of thrown up there. There were some times, he held the ball way too long. But there was also other times when he made some nice throws. So it wasn't all bad. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, it's Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger and what we've grown to expect from him.
Brian Anthony Davis grading the quarterback. Go ahead.
Well, I tell you what, he was disappointing today. I just did not feel like he was ready to put this team on his shoulders, especially when what happened to the defense not really pregame, and that actually happened on Friday with injury report. But with knowing that those guys were out, I just thought that the play calling was vanilla. Actually, vanilla is a great flavor. I hate when I do that. I just thought that he wasn't good, and he looked like everything that every time I defended him in recent years or recent weeks or months, he just looked anti that. And I really can't make excuses for him in this game, so I've got to give him a D.
Yeah, I was going to go with a D+. You expect Roethlisberger to be able to go out and win you a game or two every season, even at his age and his 18th season. And I thought this was one of them. I thought this was a game, and you can talk about a lot of different things. Offensive line, we'll clearly talk about that. He didn't have any glaring drops by receivers. Some might say that Ebron passed early in the game, but that was a tough catch. I mean, I didn't get to see a
throw. It was just a tough play. Yeah.
And I didn't get to see a replay of that to really hang that on Ebron. So until I do, I'm not going to really put too much judgment on Eric Ebron. But still, I guess maybe our expectations should change for Ben. Maybe our expectations for what we expect from Roethlisberger should change. Nonetheless, if they change for the fan base, my goodness, what does that mean for the offense and the actual Steelers? I mean, it's going to be a struggle for the rest of the season. It's been a struggle so far through 2 games. But guys, I'm looking for some hope here. And what I mean by that is there anything that you've seen from BTR specifically that says it's way too early to push the panic button, which we know that. But is there anything you're like, you know what, they can still turn this thing around offensively? You see bits and pieces here or there. What are you seeing that could give some people some hope, Dave?
On the offense?
Yes, mainly with Ben.
Not mainly with Ben, not a ton. I think this offense, I mean, unless Ben's given some more time, if you know what I mean, when he drops back to pass, I think this offense kind of is what it is. And it's not great. I mean, this team is driven by the defense, and the offense just needs to do enough. And like you said about, I can't remember which one of you said it, about Ben throwing this team on his back. I think those days are gone, but I also don't think that there's anyone else that the Steelers could ask to throw this team on their back on offense and get it done. It's just things have to go your way in order to win football games. I mean, the last 2 games, look, it comes down to where 1 or 2 plays go the other way. You're still sitting at 1-1, but you lose last week and win this week. That's the nature of the NFL. You need to make those plays go your way. So throwing the interception up there, holding the ball too long and taking the sack, things like that are but at the same time, I'd almost rather him throw it away at times rather than give the other team a big play. It's just, I don't have a lot of hope for this to get a lot better unless it's the offensive line giving him more time and establishing a run game.
Yeah, Steel Dog 88 gave us $2 earlier. I forgot to get it up on the screen there. He said that Robert Spillane played a good game. I agree 100%. We'll talk about the defense in part 2. Eric Askew gives us $5. He said, I know that it's only the second week, but I had Fietner flashbacks today. I'm sure you were not alone, Eric, in that regard. And then let's get another. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Do you have it, Dave?
Yes,
if you have it.
I got it. It's right here.
Kyle Smith gave us $5. Says, did we watch the same game? I was much more encouraged by Ben's play this game than last. Much more zip on the ball, other issues on offense. This is funny because for us, and I'll throw it over to Brian after this. For us, I feel like this is therapeutic. It's also a way to talk through these things. And so I gave Ben a really bad grade. But the more I think about the game, outside of the interception, outside of maybe holding onto the ball a little bit too long, I'm trying to think about plays where it was clear that Roethlisberger was just blatantly at fault. Brian, I'll ask you the same question I asked Dave. What plays might give us hope, or what are your thoughts about Ben moving forward?
Well, he does have some offensive weapons that are new. Pat Freiermuth, when he went to him a good bit. Dave will probably help me with the stats here, but it seemed like he caught about 4 or 5 balls in this game, and he seemed like a guy that they are working in over the middle and passing the ball. We saw what happens when you get an opportunity to connect with Najee on a pass, and he reached the end zone on that play. So there are a lot of things. If I'm going to say one thing that is actually a plus for Ben Roethlisberger, a lot of people are going to be surprised when I say this, but his safety valve that is Juju Smith-Schuster works. And we didn't see that as much in the second half. And the biggest complaint that I have about Ben right now is, and I don't know whether this is the play calling coming from Matt Canada or whether it's his decision, but when you've got a 3rd and 4, a 3rd and short, and you're going for it all on that bomb. And that seems they do that more often than not. And I'm looking for a high percentage play there. You do the high percentage plays a lot on first down and get your 4 yards. And then the next play, things go awry. But why not continue to try to find those high percentage plays on 3rd down? And I know what Dave's going to say. It's what everybody's going to say. It's what the defense has given you. I get that, but Derek Carr was taking that on 3rd down today. Ben was not. So that's my biggest problem.
Breaking news coming across the wire from Jerry Dulac, our buddy Jerry Bear from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He tweets, Tyson Alualu having surgery tomorrow for a fractured ankle, expected to miss the rest of the season. And so that means
Alualu.
Yes, I said that correctly.
No,
so I said Alualu.
It's Alualu.
Alualu. Well, then whatever. I don't care anymore.
Well, unfortunately, we're not going to have to be saying his name much more on this podcast because that's really unfortunate if he's gone for the year because he was a key person on.
We don't know the health of Stephon Tuitt.
Mm-hmm.
If Tuitt is able to come back when he's permitted to, they would have to get through one more game along the defensive line, and then Tuitt would be able to return in week 4 against the Green Bay Packers. Next week, the Steelers host the Cincinnati Bengals. So tough break physically and figuratively and literally for Tyson Alualu. And that's what again, you kind of expected when you watch the replay, you could definitely see that it was a fractured ankle. Okay, but enough about Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger. We have some other players to discuss. Before we do that, Steel Dog 88 says, I know it's early, but is this the year BTR maybe holding the offense back? I just don't see that. I guess maybe we expect more. I just don't see him being the reason that the offense is awful. When I think about the offense being awful, we'll go ahead and talk about it now. It's the offensive line.
Yeah,
I feel like the offensive line is what's holding this team back. They are really struggling in all facets of play. Let's just grade the offensive line straight up. Overall, we did last week. We did pass blocking, and then we did run blocking. Dave, go ahead. Give your offensive line grade right now.
Oh, let's go with I'll just go with the regular D. There was times where it wasn't completely terrible, but it's just not consistent. You're not getting the overall consistency in both aspects of the game that you need from this line in order to hold up and do the things that you need to do. An offense needs to go out there and run and do the things that they do, not have to work around your other inefficiencies in order to try to make something happen. And right now it seems like that's what they're doing. Everything that they have is geared towards covering for this offensive line rather than actually going to your strengths of everything you can do. That's just the feel that I get for it.
Okay. So what grade did you say, Dave? D?
I said D.
Okay. Brian, what do you think?
They failed today.
Mhm.
F.
Okay. Do you want to expand on that at all?
You saw what you saw. There's only one time that I was really impressed with the offensive line, and when Kevin Dotson, I believe, freed Najee on a specific play for a pretty good run early on, but there was not much I saw. And the discipline when you have a guy allegedly spitting, a veteran guy spitting and getting tossed out. There's just some dumb things that I'm seeing from this entire team. They just have not. And I'll give you another guy. I love him and I love his fire, but Kendrick Green is going to cost them first downs, going to cost them games if he doesn't get his head on straight. I know he's got a lot of fire and he's a passionate guy, but there was one point where I thought he was going to get a penalty too, because I thought he cracked somebody way too late. And he's just a guy that I fear is so passionate that's going to get himself in trouble. They need to calm some stuff down. They're not good enough to play this undisciplined and this angry.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fine line between anger and frustration and aggressiveness, and so I think I'm going to give the Steelers offensive line just a D. I unlike with Ben, where I said, where do I see some bright spots? I do see some times where Roethlisberger does have a clean pocket. And let's not forget that this is still a very unproven offensive group. This is not even last year's offensive line where you had mainstays DeCastro, Pouncey, Villanueva, Chuks Okorafor. They don't have that right now. And there are times where they have a nice run blocking play. It develops, and Najee Harris, for once, is not met in the backfield by a defender and having to make someone miss. I mean, you listen to Najee Harris talk and he says, I'm going to make the first guy miss. That's my job. I guess he probably never thought it would have to be 2 yards, 3 yards in the backfield all the time and fighting for his life just to get back to the line of scrimmage. So there's good and bad. I do see some signs of life with this unit, but the question is, are they starting to string together more good plays than bad plays? Yeah. I feel like it's kind of a negative right now. Dave, you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, last year with the overall offense, we said that it was something that, they're a work in progress. They're getting there. They're building. They didn't have a preseason. They had one this year. Yep. You even had the extra game compared to everyone else. Okay. You can't look around the NFL and say, a lot of these teams are still, granted, there are a lot of offenses that are struggling if they are a work in progress, but there are plenty that aren't. And are you going to be one of those bottom of the league offenses that do that? Or do you just need to have it together if you think you're actually going to be something in the NFL this year?
Yeah. And so while we're still talking about the offensive line, they did allow 2 sacks, and listen to this number, 10 quarterback hits on Ben Roethlisberger in this contest. Yikes. He was being hit early and often. The Raiders were living in the backfield, and we knew this going into this. And this is one of the reasons why I said on my shows that I'm not in the Michael Beck fan club where they're going to blow their doors off. I knew this was going to be a close game. I thought it would be a 1-score game anyways, and it went south really quick. Let's get this $5 tip up here. Time to bring Mitchell Schwartz and Russell Okung for workouts. Maybe bring DeCastro back. The offensive line and defensive injuries cost us this game, and that's from Wilson Pava, I think is how you say it, or I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. Yeah. So, I don't know if I'm going to go with the whole let's call in every single free agent. Now, if there's an injury at the position or if Trey Turner is going to be released or something like that, then that's a different story. Mm-hmm. But, Trey Turner, and for my fans out there, for the people that follow me on Twitter, I was getting eaten alive. I had to do so much during the game with the website. And I was writing or doing something else, and all of a sudden I didn't see the spitting of the video, the replay. I didn't see that yet. All I was going off of was 2 offsetting penalties, 1 player's ejected, 1 isn't. And I tweeted, I understand why Mike Tomlin's upset. And then, of course, everyone's just ripping me. Oh, he spit on the guy. I didn't see it. So I didn't see that right away. Yeah, you spit on someone, you deserve to get ejected. Like, there's nothing with that.
And in Coach Tomlin's press conference afterwards, he said that Turner was spit on.
Oh.
So that's something that was in Coach Tomlin's post. He didn't say about Turner spitting. He said about Turner being spit on. Now, we saw the video replay of Turner spitting. The question is, was he spit on? Is that what set him off? And they're like, hey, if spitting gets you ejected, why is he the only one being ejected? Bottom line is, even if you can't do that. And it's even more disappointing, and they always say it's the second guy that gets caught.
Yep.
So, I don't want to justify it, but at the same time, he did do it, and he did it, and he can't deny that he did it. But at the same time, as someone else spits on him, I feel bad for the reaction. You just got to keep it together better than that.
This is not a good time for it, but I always feel like I'm the guy that has to bring like light to the situation. Like this isn't a playoff loss, people. It's the second game of the season. Yeah. It does remind me of the Seinfeld episode of the Magic Loogie, Keith Hernandez.
one of the Steelers beautiful. I can't remember which one referenced that during the game. I can't remember who said
back
it.
Into the left. Back into the left. That, my friends, is one Magic Loogie.
I brought that episode up this week on one of my podcasts.
I thought it was on our podcast. Wasn't it? I can't remember.
It was one of my solo shows.
Then it was one I listened to.
It was either a week that was, or it was something else.
I listened to Week That Was. I don't remember.
It was the week it was. I remember. I listened to it. That was the one. I listened to it yesterday. Yep.
So that, my friends, is one Magic Loogie. Okay, let's move on to the running game. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they had the running attack. Boy, was it good. 14 carries for 39 yards, 2.8 average, 1 touchdown. That was by Juju Smith-Schuster. Najee Harris, 10 for 38, a 3.8 average. Dave, grade the running game.
The running game as a whole, you're under 40 yards. Anything less than an F minus is not that's not acceptable. I know it's only 14 carries. You know what I'm saying? But still, that is no running game. Najee Harris himself was not bad, and he had some really good moments that a lot of them were that he kind of led to himself. He was more effective in the passing game because they had to get him away from that offensive line. Coming in and handing off the ball twice to Benny Snell was basically wasting a play. So they had 2 wasted play. That to me, that's no different than fumbling the snap and falling on it if you're going to hand it off to Benny Snell at this point, because he's not. You could just see a difference when he's running up to the line of scrimmage than you do with Najee Harris. So I'm not blaming Najee Harris, but the running game as a whole is not good. And I said it even before the draft. The running back is the third aspect of the running game. He's not even the top. It goes blocking, scheme, running back. So I'm not putting this on him, but it was not acceptable.
Okay, Brian, grade the running game.
This just in, fellas. Benny Snell has acquired the naked pictures of Mike Tomlin from Daniel McCullers. And because I don't know why he's on his team at this point, and I hate to say that about anybody, but no. I'm going to take the first letter of his surname and say that the Steelers get an S for sucky, because that's how bad they were. I can't justify giving them an F for the running game. I've got to go all the way down to the bottom of the alphabet towards the bottom and say S, because they were that pee poor.
I'm going to give them a failing grade as well, but let me ask you all this. So this Najee Harris rushed for 38 yards on 10 carries. Let's just say they don't have Najee Harris. How many yards, considering the offensive line and what Najee has to do, how many yards do you think someone like Benny Snell would have had today?
-1. No.
I don't see him making a lot of people miss in the backfield. I thought Najee Harris, all things considered, played a tremendous football game.
Yeah, he did, but the running game itself was not.
No, it's awful. Yeah, you fail as a running game, but Najee Harris individually, like my winners and losers list, he's a winner. I felt like all things considered, he's making plays. Even if that play is getting hit in the backfield 4 yards deep, getting
And getting-
1 yard or
And
so back
getting to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. So,
I mean, how many times did he have to fight just to get to the line of scrimmage?
and then the stiff arm. I mean, my
Yeah.
gosh,
Oh.
that stiff arm. That stiff arm. I mean, I'm not sure if that was Vanimal-esque, but that was really good.
It was impressive.
It was good. And the catch and run, I'm glad the Steelers finally started to get him involved in the passing game. I felt that in Buffalo, they used him only as a decoy as receiver. You'd see him go out wide, and they never threw him the football. That's if you want him to be that two-way running back like they used Le'Veon Bell, you got to throw him the football from time to time. So we'll see. We'll see. Let's look at the receiving core real quick. Deontay Johnson, 9 catches of 105 yards on 12 targets. Chase Claypool, 3 for 70 with a long of 52. Najee Harris, 5 for 43 and a touchdown. Juju Smith-Schuster, 6 for 41. And Pat Freiermuth, 4 for 36. Dave, why don't you grade out the passing, the receivers, the pass catchers?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I wish that Deontay Johnson did not go over 100 yards because it was that last 11-yard play that could hopefully that's not an injury that's going to linger for him. It didn't look good. In all, the biggest problem that I'm having is the not on the same page issue. I'm going to give the receivers, I'm going to give them a B. I didn't think they did that, but I mean, I'm going to even go B+ when I really factor in like the Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris part of it. That I don't see that the receivers, as long as they're on the same page with their quarterback, I don't see them being a negative of what's going on with this team. It's just, are the Steelers going to be able to utilize them to the best of their abilities?
That's a good point. Brian, what about you? What's your grade?
I think about dominoes right here. And when I'm thinking about this game, and the only thing that kept from the entire stack of dominoes going all the way down and around and finally hitting the end and being all on the floor was because of the wide receivers. And the reason I'm saying dominoes is because we're talking about the offensive line bringing down the quarterback and the running game and all of this, and throw in a guy when we're talking about the receivers with is Najee Harris. He had a great game along with them. As far as receptions, I'm going to give them a B as well. I would give them a B+. And I thought that with the exception of, we talked about that drop at the beginning, that throw that I thought it was wide. And I want to just call out CBS here. I thought CBS's camera work, and when they missed a play, when they decided to go to split screen, they did not show everything, and we could not watch the game properly based on that. So I thought a lot of things that CBS did today on the camera end, I didn't like. So I didn't get, like Jeff, I didn't get to see that play, that throw to Eric Ebron. My buddy that I was watching the game with was yelling that Ebron dropped it. It looked like it was a wide throw and he was able to get a hand on it, but it didn't look like it was a good completion. So I don't know what the problem was there. I thought the wide receivers were pretty good in this game. The other exception, the one thing that I can complain about is the fact that I've heard some people point out that Deontay Johnson needs to play full plays. And when it's a bad throw, maybe stopping and not going off for full force on that. So I think that is definitely a problem. But I really thought on the offensive side of the ball for the second week in a row, all of these guys really found a way to shine. When Ben gets the time to use them, and when he's on the same page with them, they're really, really good.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a B. My biggest complaint, and this is more so from a fan perspective than anything X's and O's, is that Chase Claypool, we all said that he's going to be the guy that could emerge as a superstar, the wide receiver 1, if you want to put it like that. Some of these catches, these big plays down the field. I mean, he comes down with several. He had a 52-yard reception today, but there's also several where you're like, oh, gosh, like the best in the game make that catch. And I know he was a second-round draft pick, but if he wants to elevate his game to that level, you got to make some of those catches. And I hate to say that, and I hate to be, maybe I'm nitpicking, but I'm going to give him a B. Absolutely give him a B. And then Sean Manahan, he says it well. gives us $5 is too many damn injuries. I agree, Sean. So when we talk about a lot of the injuries, we're going to be talking about the defensive side of the ball, which is what we're going to be talking about in the second half of this podcast. So if you are watching live on YouTube or Facebook, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. But if you're listening on the audio side, head over to part 2. We'll talk about the defense and special teams. Finish it up. We'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the second part of the Steelers postgame podcast. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, joined as always with Dave Schofield and Brian Anthony Davis, and we're dissecting the Steelers' loss. They moved their record to 1-1 as they lose to the Raiders 26-17 at Heinz Field. All right, let's talk about the tough part, is the defense. Let's talk about the injuries. At the end of part 1, Sean Manhan gave us a tip and said too many injuries. Well, they were depleted for sure. When you think about not having Bush before the game with a groin, not having Hayden with a groin, losing TJ Watt, losing Tyson Alualu, all these different things. It's going to be tough to grade, but guys, I want to get your knee-jerk reaction here about the defensive side of the ball in regards to, do you look at this performance differently based on the injuries, or is it, hey, you got to perform no matter who's in there? Dave, what do you think?
Well, there's just certain things you can't do if you don't have the right personnel to do it. I mean, Joe Schobert's going to be much better in the role next to Devin Bush rather than having to be Devin Bush, if you know what I mean, with something like that. James Pierre is going to be much better on the outside as the outside corner in dime across from Joe Hayden rather than having to step in and be Joe Hayden. So you want these players to step up and do what they can, but the question is, can you do the same things? And when you're talking about, I mean, my goodness, you're talking about Pro Bowler Joe Hayden, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year finalist TJ Watt going out, not playing the second half. Tyson Alualu, who was extremely strong last year. Devin Bush, who was a top 10 draft pick. Those are big things to overcome. Guys, you still got to take the field. You still got to go out there and do what you can. But you also know that the offense's job is to exploit the biggest weaknesses on the defense. And when you take something that is once your strength and now what is your weakness, it makes a completely big difference. If you're losing 2 players that might have been the weakest links anyway, then you've just got to step in and you know that's what they're going to attack. Now they're attacking something completely different because your strengths are gone.
Brian, what are your thoughts, knee-jerk, on the defensive side of the ball?
Wow, Dave said it well. I can actually say that there. The problem with the whole defense is the one injury that I think was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back was, of course, TJ Watt. Because I think if TJ Watt stays in there, you're going to have more pressure. Dave said it earlier. You're not asking guys like Highsmith and Melvin Ingram III, who I think is absolutely fantastic as well. I think Melvin's great pickup for that team. But you're changing that 3-man rotation to a 2-man rotation. And I think if he's still in there, and of course it's ifs and buts, but I actually think that Derek Carr is harassed so much more in this game. And, I'm sorry I just mentioned the name David Carr because I'm having trouble now because I don't know which Carr brother I hate more. I despise them both. Absolutely do. But really, when we're talking about the defense, there are some guys that still stepped up and said, wait, we're still here. And I've got to give props out to Cam Hayward. That guy is the man of all men on that defense. We talk about how important TJ Watt is. Cam, he is just a football titan out there, and I love watching him play. He did everything he could to keep that defense going, but I still think, knee-jerk, if you keep TJ in there, you're probably okay.
It's a different game. Completely different game. Greg S gives us $5. He's lost either our top guy or second guy on the list from almost every position group on defense. Too much to stop Derek Carr all game. That's tough to disagree with that sentiment. And then Wilson, he gives us a 750. He said, Mean Joe game, 75 games with sacks. The sack streak continued. Yes, it did. TJ making the case for Defensive Player of the Year, this time showing how much worse the Steelers are without him. I never thought of it that way. With TJ and Hayden, they like the matchup better. We'll put it that way. So yeah, good point. And the sack streak does continue. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense was able to sack Derek Carr twice, and they only had 5 quarterback hits. And TJ Watt did have one of those, and he didn't play a long time. Melvin Ingram had 3. Jameer Jones actually had 1, and that was it for quarterback hits. Guys, let's start off. We'll talk about the pass rush. We just rattled off those stats. Let's talk about the pass rush for the Steelers. The sacks were TJ Watt had 1, and Melvin Ingram had the other, his first for the Steelers. Grade out the pass rush, Dave. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, there was some times where it was effective, like when Melvin Ingram, got held and had a hold of Derek Carr, and luckily they made the call and, had the penalty and everything else there. The pass rush, let's just say, I'm going to give it a B-. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't what it needed to be either, if you know what I mean. Kind of expected a lot more. I mean, but I don't want my expectations to fall off a cliff when TJ Watt's not out there, but TJ Watt wasn't out there at the same time. And it just didn't seem to be. Was it just me, or was Alex Highsmith not even rushing the passer all the time? If you know what I mean, he was setting the edge on the run and things like that. I got to go back and watch that to see if that was just where I noticed it a couple plays, or if that was something that happened more often. So all in all, with the pass rush, it wasn't like it was terrible. It just wasn't nearly as effective as what it was the previous week. And obviously because of the small sample size of stuff, that's what we had grown to believe.
All right, Brian, grade the pass rush.
I'm going a little lower, actually a lot lower. I'm going to go with a C-, because really I get everything that Dave's saying, and I really appreciate that. But my problem with this is there was really hardly any pressure on Derek Carr in the second half of that ball game. Before that all happened, before you lost 2 of your players on defense in the middle of the game, in the middle of the first half, you were looking at, hey, this defense is going to be fine. With this pass rush, they are going to help out the secondary that lost Joe Hayden this week. And it just, when both of those guys went out, everything changed. But when Dave says that, they've got to be able to pick up the slack for losing a guy, they absolutely have to, and they were not able to on the pass rush end. I don't know if scheme changed to help protect them with that and to not go full out. That could have been a thing. This is a question that I honestly want to ask, and it's rhetorical because nobody can answer this. But if TJ Watt goes out on Thursday, they're in a lot better shape, probably, right? You might want to think that could be true, because then they have time to plan for it. It's almost like they said, all right, if something ever happens to TJ, we still have Highsmith and Ingram and we're okay. But that it didn't seem like there was a plan for that mid-game. That's something that you don't normally plan for, so I get it. But all I'm saying is they were not able to rush the passer that much with much effectiveness, with the exception of number 8.
Well, and what was the matchup we all were looking for? Watt versus Leatherwood. Mm-hmm. And then Leatherwood even leaves the game. And so now they're going into their...
about the same time Watt did, actually.
Right. And so you're thinking Ingram or Highsmith should be able to feast on that matchup. And the fact that they only had 2 sacks, and one of those was TJ Watt, who left the game, is really astonishing to me. So yes, the streak continues. And yes, that's great. But at the same time, this is a game, and I talked about it on Raiders podcasts, and when I was asked questions, how do you best defend against Darren Waller, is you don't give Derek Carr time to throw. And they did that early, but then when Watt went out, like you guys said, it just kind of became monotonous, and there wasn't much. And maybe they got fatigued. It's still early in the season. It was warm. It was a warm day in Pittsburgh. They're used to getting some time off. I'm not creating excuses. I'm going to give the pass rush a C, just based on the fact that they should have done more, in my opinion. Dave, what do you want to say?
Said you brought up Derek Carr, and I know we're focused on the Steelers, and that's our problem. Sometimes we focus so much. We're wearing our black and gold goggles. We're looking at what the Steelers are doing. If you go back and look at the Monday night game, even that they pulled off at home, and you look at this week, Derek Carr played way better today. He played
He had
really
a great
well.
game. Had a great
He
game.
didn't make the mistake that you kept looking for, you know, and that we were looking for all the time, and was very efficient with the offense and didn't force it to Waller if Waller wasn't available, and did everything that he needed to do. It's almost like pulling that game out on Monday night gave him some confidence and some swagger that he could go out there and do anything and actually take care of the football and not have to take chances to do what he was doing. And really, that's one thing that you have to say is that this Raider team their offense looked way better than I think that they did on Monday. Well, specifically Derek Carr.
Well, the loss of Watt was huge. Brian mentioned that, but to me, the loss of Joe Hayden was bigger. I felt like the loss of Joe Hayden, because even when you have Melvin Ingram and Highsmith in there, you had no one there to lock down the other receiving option. And we saw Justin Lane out there way more than any of us would have liked. James Pierre was hit or miss in terms of his play. It looked like they were grasping at straws and trying to find someone out there who can we put out there to make a play? We saw Ahkello Witherspoon for the first time. He gets burned by Ruggs deep for a 61-yard touchdown reception. It just seemed like the cornerback depth, it is what it is. It's been all season. It's just not that great. If you have Sutton and Hayden as your primary two, you're fine. Without Hayden, well, we saw what it was. So let's talk about that secondary now. Let me go over some statistics here. Derek Carr finished 28 of 37, 382. Good Lord. 10.3 average, 2 touchdowns, no picks, sacked twice, 126.2 rating. Ruggs had 5 catches for 113. Darren Waller, 5 for 65. Renfro, 5 for 57. Drake, 5 for 46. Brian Edwards, 3 for 40. Goodness gracious, guys. Let's grade this secondary. Dave, go ahead.
I'll go just a regular D. I keep forgetting what letter to go on. Just because, like, Cam Sutton, last week we saw him flying to the ball all the time. It just didn't seem quite the same. The biggest thing has to be given up. I mean, 3rd and 10, down 2, get off the field, get the ball back for your offense, whole different ball game, 61-yard touchdown. That's really what it comes down to as much as anything. And I mean, if you look at it, I mean, let's just real quick. The Steelers knew they needed to try to keep Darren Waller there. It's Darren, right? Darren Waller.
Darren Waller, yes.
And I mean, and look at what he's done. What was his stat line again?
Waller, 5 catches for, let me see here.
65.
5 catches for 65. He had 7 targets.
Okay, well, let's look at some of his last games. Last week he was 105. His final games of 2020 going backwards: 117, 112, 150, 75, 200. I mean, this is the most he's been kept in check since, my goodness, week 12 of last season. So they did that, but in doing that, it seemed like, for example, Minkah Fitzpatrick was so focused on Darren Waller on that long touchdown. You don't know if he didn't make the right reaction or if he was doing what he was asked to do. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jeff, you said that he's got to have the deep middle on that, unless they were specifically had something else in mind for Waller. And so you took away the one thing, but you let the other things burn you.
So you gave it what was your grade?
It was a D.
There you go.
Do we care what the letters are?
Honestly? I do. I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
Let's go.
It's just
not that. So is Dave.
I'm not that kind of teacher. But anyways, Brian, teach PE. Brian, go ahead.
So you definitely would agree these kinds of performances.
They all get A's. Brian, go ahead.
Then it should be pass fail.
Yeah. Did you remember Did you
wear your
gym
PE clothes today? Yes. Brian,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Rub dirt in it and take a laugh.
Sorry, we've got to find something else to laugh and smile.
I mean, people
about
are acting
because-
like the team was completely obliterated. I mean, come on, people. Like, I get it. They lost. They didn't look good, but guess what? They get to play next week at home against Cincinnati. Like, it's not a playoff loss. Playoff losses, this is what it feels like. Anyways, Brian, I digress. Go ahead.
Well, it's not week 2 of 2019 when you lose your franchise quarterback
Oh yeah.
and you lose the game as well. So, look, it is a long season. Jeff Hartman had a show on Let's Ride saying, hey, it's going to be a title it's going to be a bumpy ride this year. Don't expect them to start off 11-0. And that's probably my final thoughts. So I probably, messed all that up. So you can give me an F. You can give me an
show,
F.
Folks. We'll see you next week for another.
But you know what? I mean, what do you give this defense? I mean, this secondary, we've realized how important Joe Hayden is. And that's something they've really got to think about. You don't have the guy on the other side like a Steven Nelson last year that was able to pick up that little bit of a slack and bring everybody in. You don't have that other side, so you're really left half naked out there when you lose number 23. But those guys still get paid and they still have to come out and play. And we've seen other opponents in the last couple of years that lose their top corner and the guys come in and they beat you down. So these guys did not step up. So I hate giving grades because you could say, oh, you're just being way too harsh when you give them an F. But I've given other Fs. I gave an F to the running attack that has a running back that I think is fantastic and had a good game. So if I'm giving a running game that includes Najee Harris, who I think is a bright spot for this team, and Jeff said is a winner, then I have to give this defensive backfield an F because they blew it on that Henry Ruggs play. Like Jeff said, or like Dave said, Minkah might have been asked to do that. That's true, but still, they were not able to keep up without Joe Hayden in there. And when you lose TJ Watt and even Tyson, you know what's going to happen? They're going to suffer even more and more because we've talked about this all the time. When the Steelers didn't have the pass rush in 2015 and 16, when they didn't have those guys going after the quarterback, the defensive backs were left out on an island. So when they lost those guys, they lost even more than just Joe Hayden. But doesn't matter. They couldn't pick up the pieces.
Yeah, I'm going to give them an F. It's when you look at Derek Carr's stat line, my goodness, like it was bad. We'll just put it that way. It was really bad. And honestly, when I watched the Henry Ruggs touchdown, my first reaction when I saw the safety kind of slipping, like falling on the turf, I'm thinking, oh man, Trey Norwood was out of position. I almost tweeted it out and they showed a replay. I was like, wow, that was Minkah. Never mind. Norwood was on the blitz. So we're going to get to one more aspect before we do that. I think it's Tavia Jones. I apologize if I mispronounced it. He gave us $5, but didn't leave a comment. So here's his comment. He said, aloha from Oahu, Hawaii. I'm jealous. Wish I was in your spot instead of where I am. He said, appreciate your channel. Love all the content. Attrition is as much part of the game as a good defense or offense. I couldn't agree more. And make sure you check out our podcast channel. You're missing content if you're just following us on YouTube. So check it out wherever you get your podcast. Search Steelers are Behind the Steel Curtain. Subscribe and follow so that you don't miss any of that audio only content. Okay, let's talk about the rush defense before we head over to special teams and finish it up. The rush defense, not bad. They gave up 52 yards on 25 carries for a 2.1 average. Again, all things considered, Dave, what's your grade there?
Okay, say that one more time. What was it? How many yards?
25 carries for 52 yards, a 2.1 yard average.
52 yards, but 31 of those yards were in the fourth quarter. Now, you can look at that in two ways. The one way to look at it is to say, oh, yeah, when they really needed to stop the run at the end, they just couldn't do it. Or the other way you look at that is, my goodness, if you are looking at the time of possession, which I almost said Oakland, which Las Vegas had by almost a 10-minute advantage, you can understand how they could be getting worn down. But still, even when you're worn down, you got to dig deep and try to do it. So the run defense was really, really good the whole game, but yet at the very end, when you needed it, it was right there. I'm still going to give it a B+.
All right, Brian, what's your rush defense grade?
I like that. I could honestly say that you could give them a B or a B+ because they were going after it. It just wasn't enough but it wasn't really their fault. They still went after it. But I talked earlier that when TJ went out, you just didn't have the same rush. And if you could have gotten to Carr more, you couldn't. But that's the way that it was set up. So I'm probably going to have to, just not to be too hypocritical from what I said before, maybe I throw it down to a B-.
Yeah, I'm going to do a B-. Mike Tomlin says it all the time. Situational football. Being able to win in certain situations and stopping the run, like Dave mentioned in the fourth quarter, was something that's a situation you have to be prepared for, and they couldn't do it. So that's what I'm going to do. I normally would just gloss over this, but I don't think you can. We do need to talk about special teams. Chris Boswell nails a 56-yard field goal, longest in Heinz Field history. I thought Presley Harvin represented himself much better this week than he did last week with some big punts. Guys, you don't have to grade the special teams, but I felt like if there was a bright spot, I thought special teams was pretty good. And honestly, Ray McCloud, I felt could have almost had a return for a touchdown if he just tried to take it to the boundary instead of cutting it up. I don't know. Maybe that was just the angle. Dave, what are your thoughts on the special teams?
Yeah, like to me, the biggest winner is a new Heinz Field. I'm going to say NFL record because I can't go back and verify that there hasn't been a college kick longer than that at Heinz Field of 56 yards. I mean, that's really the person who came through with all his opportunities more than anyone is the Boz. And Harvin punted well. They covered much better with everything. So the special teams and all, what's funny is even though they didn't play as consistent last week, they got the touchdown. This week they played much more tight, much more consistent, but you didn't get the big splash play like you did last week.
Yep. All right, Brian, what do you think about the special teams?
Dave, I've watched a lot of college football in my lifetime. I don't think there's ever been a college kick more than 56 yards. Really.
No, I'm just saying, I know the NFL stats. I can't verify. There's high school games played there too.
That's a C1.
You get 57-yarders, then
I'm sure we already heard of it. Dave Schofield kicked back in high school to the 56-yarder game.
Absolutely. That's a CYA Dave answer. I love it. Special teams, man, I can't complain about the special teams. And when Danny Smith Jr. is your coach, that's hard to do. Hard not to complain about him, really. But today, they really, if you were giving out a game ball, and I know we're not, but if I had to give out a game ball, it's probably to Chris Boswell. And maybe I'm thinking as an alternate, Presley Harvin the third. And so, you know what I mean? I thought the special teams were fine. The nice thing about it is when you bring out Boswell, there's not a worry right now. You feel like he's going to make every kick. When I'm sitting next to my buddy. I love him, but he's pessimistic. He's like, 56. I'm like, Boswell's going to nail this. There's no doubt in my mind because he's Boswell and he's at that level right now. So no, good job by the special teams.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, kudos to the Steelers for sticking with him. I mean, in an NFL where kickers get tossed around like spare change, they could have cut ties with him and said, you know what, we'll eat the cap hit. Doesn't matter. He stinks. Stuck with him. He's made him look like geniuses for sure. All right, what do you guys want to call? I feel like instead of game balls, we do like a dud of the week. I feel like we should do the opposite of a game ball. Let's do the dud of the week. So if you were to pick a dud of the week for this loss in week 2, who would it be? Dave, we'll start with you.
You just make up something new, and I'm supposed to already be ready.
Come on, Dave. You're smart. You're smart guy. Think on your feet.
A dud of the week.
Yeah, there's one that's an obvious answer.
The biggest dud of the week. Brian looks like he's ready. Yeah, honestly, it's got to be. I almost went with this one. Let's go with Witherspoon. I mean, I don't know if he played more than one snap. That's the only snap I saw him on the field. I really
that was his only snap. Boy, was that
was
bad.
It? Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I'm saying, but if it was, that would be awful.
So if that's the case, then I'm going to say then that was a pretty big dud. But sometimes who knows? Maybe he's one of those corners that was out there getting the job done, and you never heard his name and you never saw him until that one was there. I just didn't see him on the field before that.
All right, Brian, do you have a dud of the week?
Yeah, it hurts me to say this, and it could be because of the offensive line, but my dud is Ben.
Okay. Yeah, it's nothing wrong with that. My dud of the week is Mike Tomlin failing to go for it on 4th and a yard.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
I'm sorry, but that is one of those situations where you talk about living in your fears and all this BS that you pump out in press conferences. And then when it comes down to when the rubber meets the road, you punt. And you have a running back that if you just get a little bit of push, he will get the yard. And we've seen Najee in the entire, almost all the preseason, 3 games. And we've seen him in 2 regular season games now. If he doesn't get hit 3 yards in the backfield, he's going to get the yard. And you also have a 6'4", 250-pound quarterback.
Did you trust the offensive line for him to not get hit in the backfield on 4th and
What a damning statement, though. And you also have Derek Watt that you haven't even used. They didn't even use him, I don't think, today once. If they did, I was not aware of it. Wasn't paying attention to it. But that's pretty damning. So my dud of the week is Mike Tomlin failing to go for it on 4th and inches because, yes, you punted the ball, and yes, they got the ball back. You lost a lot of time. And when you're 2 scores down, you cannot, in my opinion, just say, well, hopefully we'll get it back. There's no guarantee you're ever going to get the ball back. So that's my dud of the week is Mike Tomlin living in his fears. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, I was going to say you could pile on that to me. Then a dud is the offensive line, because if you don't trust your offensive line to get you a half a yard on 4th down, even deep in your own territory, then you don't have an offensive line.
Yeah. Okay, Brian, do you want to talk about that at all, or are you good?
No, I think you're right on with that. But I would like to throw a wrench in things and just bring something up real quick that if I missed it, I do apologize. I don't know where my head is at today. But there's 2 guys that I've heard getting a lot of flack the last 2 weeks and in live chats today, and it's the inside linebackers. And I really thought I did not think Joe Schobert really had a bad game. In fact, I did like his coverage on that one play when he did break it up. And I thought Robert Spillane was flying to the ball. So I would actually give those guys some credit for actually being a bright spot in this game today.
Spillane led the team with tackles with 12, 8 solo tackles, 1 tackle for loss. Joe Schobert, 10 tackles, 7 solo, and had 2 pass defenses as well. Statistics show that they weren't bad. They led the team in tackles this week, 1 and 2, Spillane and Schobert. So, okay, let's do some final thoughts and we'll finish it up. Dave, we'll start with you.
Final thoughts are, it's funny because what I feel that we got out of week 2 from the Steelers was kind of what I was expecting from week 1. I was expecting the offense to not be sharp, which it wasn't in week 1 to start either. I was expecting not everything to go their way, for the Steelers to not be playing perfect football, to be a work in progress. And that's what that's what we saw in week 2. And we didn't see it as much in week 1, or maybe we did see it and we kind of overlooked it more because the Steelers pulled off that victory. I said it before, the Steelers, you needed to win this game. You went from being a 6.5 point underdog in week 1 on the road and winning to a 5.5, which even moved up more to 6, maybe even more point favorite going into this game, and you drop it at home. Now, the injuries starting at 11:30 with the injury report, because I was hopeful both those guys were going to play, and then they couldn't. When they started to mount up, you had a lot of things working against you. And if this is a team that everything has to go right for you personnel-wise, then you're going to have games like this. You're going to have games where guys are out, guys are dinged up, and if you can't overcome, then you're in trouble. But it's week 2. It's week 2. You need to go move on from this. Learn from it, grow from it, get into your AFC North football, wake up the offense, regroup on defense to say, hey, we've got to try to get it done with who we got, and come out here next week and give a better performance for that home crowd.
Well said. Brian, final thoughts.
One of the greatest numbers in Pittsburgh Steelers history is number 12. But this week, 12 was a bad number once again. And the reason it was a bad number, because last week the number was 11. And in the playoff game, it was 10. And before that, 9, 8, 7, 6, as we go on. The reason I bring that up is the Steelers are not, they stretched their streak to 12 games of not being able to score on the first drive. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. And they cannot continue to do that. Now, I told my friend, I'm like, this is a second half game. The Steelers will be back. They will score some points. They looked a little bit better in the second half than they did in the first half, but they had a lot going against them today. This was a very winnable game in a lot, even late in the game. They had an opportunity to win this game and pull this out, but the planets did not align for this team, and they were not able to rise up to the challenge of the injuries and the misfortune that they suffered. But that's something that this team works on. We have seen in the last 15 years of Mike Tomlin football that this team does not give it up. They don't give up. They don't quit after a 1-1 season at the beginning of the season after week 2. Guys, fans, ladies, don't give up, because we might be talking about a 6-game winning streak with this team, because this team does that. They're named after steel. They have hearts that beat in their chest that are tough, and they're resilient, and they come back. We said it was going to be a bumpy road. Dave said it well when he said this is the game that he expected last week. Yeah, a lot of us did last week. Then that game happens last week, and they pull it out, and we think there's going to be magic. And we think that they're going to overcome everything thrown their way. They couldn't do it this week. They're learning from this game, and they will keep on going. Don't throw in that terrible towel just yet, my friends.
Adam White gave us $5. Says the Bills look great today. Played two good teams and lost to one of them without key players due to injury. No need to panic yet. I agree with that, Adam. Thank you for the tip. We appreciate it. And then we have another one from, excuse me, Occam's Ox gave us $4.99. I think I said that correctly.
Occam's Ox.
Occam's Ox, my bad. Just got home from the game. Crowd was certainly fired up. Drag to drop this one, but it's only week 2. Lots of football left. Get healthy for Cincinnati. Yeah, here's the thing. I'll finish this show up with this. I'll be brief. Every single time the Steelers have won a Super Bowl, it hasn't been perfect. The season hasn't been perfect. They've had injuries. They've dropped games. They've lost games they probably should have won. It is what it is. You move on to the next one. Again, a lot of fans are treating this like it was a playoff game. It's not. Week 3, Cincinnati comes to town. You got to take care of your business at home in the division. It's going to be a big game. Make sure you stay tuned to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com and our audio platform for all the latest and greatest stuff leading up to this game. That's it. We'll be back next Sunday, another 1 o'clock kickoff for the Steelers post-game podcast. Take it easy, everyone. We'll see you next week.